my God. Other than everybody dying, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We have a crazy-ass president. My state's on fire. Otherwise...
This is The Other 51. I'm Brian, and this week I'm joined by Jeff Pearlman, and we talk about his new book, Three-Ring Circus. My guest this week is one of my favorite writers, one of my favorite guests, making his, I believe, fourth appearance on The Other 51, here to talk about his new book, Three-Ring Circus, as well as whatever else we come up with in the conversation. Jeff Pearlman, welcome back.
Hey, man. They say the fourth time is a charm. I actually thought it was 5 times, but I think you're right. I think
Okay.
You're probably right. It's probably 4. Yeah, it could be 5. But let's just say 10.
Let's say, 10. Well, you'll have a new book out in a few years, and we'll have you back on, so we can at least just every time can be the charm. We can just keep testing that theory out. So,
yeah, right. And I just want to say, I think my last 4 books have probably been, probably my 4 bestsellers. So,
okay.
I used to think maybe it's the topics, but maybe it's appearing on your podcast.
I that's a clear correlation. I can see that absolutely being true. So, so the book is out this week. I'm curious, what's it like for you? What's it like releasing a book about the Shaq Kobe Lakers, or just a book in general now? I mean, end of September 2020, given stuff we were just talking about before we started recording. Gestures madly at the world. What's it like putting a sports book out into the world right now?
So it's really funny because I host a writing podcast,
mm-hmm.
and I've had different guests on, several guests in my shoes now, the position I'm in now. And I think I always kind of assumed in a weird way that this would all, I don't know, by the time my book came out, maybe it would be better, blah, blah, blah. And I would ask them, what's it like? And I think in my head, I kind of pitied them a little bit. Like, God, that really sucks. And the answer is it really sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks. It's the world's 9 millionth most pressing issue. So I can't, but it's not fun. It's not the same fun. I mean, it's still cool, and you still bust your ass, and you still do a ton of interviews like this, and there's still an excitement over seeing, hopefully people like the book, and, but we have a cousin who recently had his bar mitzvah, and he had to do it over Zoom. And I feel like I can feel that. Like, you work and you work and you work, and you have this exciting day, and 200 people are going to come, and you're doing it on a computer screen.
Right.
Yes, it's a little bit of a buzzkill. I won't lie.
Right. So, so the book is out this week, and I know you probably get this question a million times, so I try to steer away from that. But I am curious. So, when you were maybe coming at this at a different angle, do you remember when you realized that your next book was going to be about this Laker team? Was there an epiphany moment, or was it just kind of like in general thinking of things? Do you remember when it struck you and where it came from?
I don't actually, but I will say, you do have sometimes with books, you have an idea and you think, will I be able to get a book deal for this? The USFL is definitely a good example of that. Will I ever be able to get a book deal for the USFL? Or I think Barry Bonds, I was like, I don't know. Anyway, I don't know. With this, when I came up with the idea, I didn't have much doubt that I'd be able to get a book deal. I just think the characters are too big, and the team franchise is too big, and et cetera, et cetera. So I don't remember when it hit me exactly, but sometimes an idea is a good idea pretty quickly, and I kind of knew this was a pretty strong idea off the bat, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
Was it just the characters on it? Because it's fairly, recent-ish history, and you've been living in Southern California for a while. So what was it that kind of, obviously Shaq, Kobe, Phil are in the pantheon, but what else about the idea kind of struck you as, this is if not a no-brainer, then pretty good?
A couple of things. Number one, you're talking about a huge marquee franchise, and that comes with a large fan base. It just does. It's not like writing about the Indianapolis Colts. The Lakers are enormous. Number two, I think beyond just the main characters is you have the dynamics and the interplay between them, especially Shaq and Kobe. There's always been kind of an intrigue about that relationship and how two people who clearly did not get along very well were able to have such success. And it's not your cliche. It's actually, the funny thing is, it's not a cliche. Like, the cliche is, well, on the court, they were able to put their differences aside and their games meshed together. Like, they were just really, really good. Like, they were just really, really talented and really, really good. It wasn't just a matter of, oh, we put our differences aside and blah, blah, blah. Like, they were talented. I just think that relationship is really, really fascinating. And I freaking love role players. I'm addicted to role players. I love writing about role players. And there were a lot of guys on this team who I was fascinated by, including Dennis Rodman's short tenure there, J.R. Ryder's short tenure there, Rick Fox coming over there, Robert Horry coming over there after throwing a towel in the face of his coach at Phoenix. I don't know. I just really was into it from a very early point.
So what is it about role players that you like so much?
Because their stories aren't told. You don't hear that much about them. And once they vanish, they're gone. So, you know, maybe Mark Madsen had his moment in the sun for the Lakers for a brief period of time. But then when he's done, he's done. And it's all yours. If you want to dive into that book, that Mark Madsen story is all yours to tell again, which is really cool. I love that stuff. And I just feel like you get great stories from role players. Like, my philosophy always is and always has been along the lines of, the free agent running back from Bucknell who was in camp with the Packers for 3 weeks. Brett Favre probably won't remember him, but he will, without question, remember his time in camp with the Packers.
Sure.
You know, and so I love finding the guys. Like, I interviewed a gazillion guys who played summer league with and against Kobe his first 2 years. You know, I love those guys, the Jimmy Kings and the David Booths and stuff like that. So they just give you a wealth of material. You know, they really do.
Right. So how many, we've talked about your writing process and organizing process. How many Word docs did you end up with in researching this book?
Oh, man. I mean, I interviewed somewhere in the 350 person, range. I printed out, I think, 10,000 pages of notes,
Oof.
Which is articles. Yeah, I got to change that process a little bit. And I'm shifting slowly, but I am. I'm a little bit of a creature of habit. And then I probably bought on eBay about 40 different books, because you'll be writing about the series with the Pistons, and you'll be like, did anyone do a book about those Pistons? Oh, or you'll be writing about the two Western Conference playoff series against Utah and Malone and Stockton. It turns out this writer, Michael C. Lewis, did a book about those Jazz. Well, I want to get that book, and there's not, Gary Payton never wrote an autobiography, but there was a kid's book done about him that was actually shockingly good. So you buy that, you just end up absorbing all these materials.
So as you're interviewing and doing these interviews, and I'm curious, you've done so many of them over your career and written so many books on them. What are some of your tools and techniques and maybe advice you have for talking to people and getting them to remember things that happened, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, beyond just the kind of, surface level stuff that maybe you get when you're doing a newspaper feature or like, when they're talking, just in general? How do you kind of get them to remember stuff and go deeper into their time and into what they remember?
Well, one of the keys, I think, is to arrive with information already. So you're doing your research, you're taking notes about your research. You want to make sure you come prepared with sort of little primers and little talking points. Example, I'm interviewing Rick Fox, let's just say, I did interview him at a Starbucks in LA. And I want to come in knowing as much about his experiences as possible. So I want to know about, example, he got in a fight with Doug Christie of the Sacramento Kings in the preseason, in a preseason game. And it was this great fight, and it was written about a lot.
I was gonna say, I oddly remember that, and that's a random thing to remember, but yeah.
It was a great fight, and then he chased him down the tunnel, and Shaq was in street clothes, and he got involved, and Christie's wife was involved, and blah, blah, blah. So when I go to ask Rick Fox about that fight, I don't want to say, what do you remember about your fight with Doug Christie? What I want to say is, I've been reading a lot about that fight with Doug Christie. It's crazy that, I was watching the video of it and you threw the first punch, and then with the wife coming down and blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, his memory is sparked, and he's like, he doesn't have to I'm also not wasting my time with him saying, well, the wife came down and blah, 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 blah. I'm actually giving him a little bit of I'm giving him Cliff Notes, and then he's able to fill in the blanks. I want people to fill in the blanks. I don't want them wasting their time with me telling me things I already know and that I can find. I want to spark their memory so they can say, oh yeah, what's crazy about his wife coming down is she actually had a purse in her hand and she hit me twice with the purse. So maybe if I don't remind him the wife was there, he never thinks to say that. But the wife mentioning the wife. So as much material as you can come with makes for a better interview, without question.
Definitely. I've definitely found that. And it's a balancing act because you want to be able to get new stuff out of them and get new information and, not go in there feeling everything. But yeah, that background is just so vital. And it I'm sure you felt this before. It gives you so much a feeling of credibility that like this person's going to take you seriously, that you're interviewing, that you're not messing around, that you're not, like you said, wasting your time, that you've done a little homework, and I've always found that tends to impress the people enough and kind of make for a better conversation, a better interview.
Yeah, it's not really about impressing them, but in a way it is. It's more that they take you seriously. Like the worst thing you can do is say, I interview Rick Fox, and the first thing I ask is, where'd you go to college? Like, it's over. You just lost a stupid interview. I mean, in most cases, or I say, so how many years did you play for the Lakers? Or I ask something like just really sort of basic, like, so did you like playing, in the Staples Center? I mean, there are just better ways to phrase it. I'm not actually an awful person, but there are better ways to phrase it that don't make you sound like a moron. Like, it's better to say, I read this article. I remember I read this article in the LA Times back in 2003 where you said you really kind of hated the Staples Center. Why was that? Instead of just asking these big, broad questions that show you did no research. You can't go wrong researching a subject before. You just can't.
Right. No. The impressing wasn't the right word, but I also found it like it's a subtle shift of the power dynamic too, because now all of a sudden it's much more like, it's cliche to say you want to have a conversation with them, because it's not. It's a different goal, but it kind of takes it shifts. It takes like this is gonna sound weird, but takes their power away and kind of gets you back on that level ground where you're exchanging information and getting information rather than, I don't know. I'm not putting this right, but that's how it always feels to me, is that it kind of, I'm not looking up at this person as like some, interview subject. That's now a person I'm talking to that I know a little bit about.
Yeah. Well, I would say also one thing that has helped me through the years, and I think it definitely, I don't hear this discussed that often, but it's true. It's like the lesson as you get older, you become far less intimidated by these people. Like it's funny. I did a podcast the other day where the host was a 16-year-old, and he was a son of a guy I went to college with, and a really smart kid. And he asked me and it was from the eyes of a 16-year-old. So when you go and you talk to so-and-so, you must be really nervous. Like when you talk to Shaq, you must be really nervous. And the answer is, I'm not nervous at all. Like, yeah, I might be excited or I might have some anticipation, but nervousness is not one of those things. And when you're not nervous and when you're talking with the person just as another guy, it usually makes the interview far better. And the other thing is, you can never go wrong having a little empathy or understanding. Like, some of the things I've learned as I've gotten older is just by seeing it and really talking about it, is the transition from being an athlete to being an ex-athlete is ridiculously hard. And like with football in particular, the physical devastation to your body, to your mind, blah, 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 is really rough. So when I'm interviewing former football players, retired football players, a lot of times I'll be like, I will bring that up and talk about the transition, even if it's not for my book, just to sort of empathize and show that I understand what it is and what it is to go through that, and that it's a process a lot of you guys have that I have never had to go through, but I understand how bad it is. Like, I think the more you can empathize, understand, show that you have knowledge, the better off you are.
Yeah. So, this is your fourth or fifth book about a team and kind of like an iconic team in like a certain time. You had the Mets book, the other Lakers book from the Showtime era, I'm blanking. Cowboys, thank you.
Cowboys. I think that's it. And then I did a lead book on the USFL. I didn't do it.
Right. Yeah. Right. I blanked out the Cowboys because of what they did to my Bills in those Super Bowls. Those didn't happen. So what about, where does this Lakers team, where does it fit into that kind of genre of team? Like how does it, is this group, how are they similar to those teams at all?
They're definitely the least similar.
Okay.
There's definitely some ties between the 86 Mets, the 90s Cowboys, the Showtime Lakers, as far as the era and the togetherness of the teams and sort of the partying that was allowed in sports at that time and the womanizing and kind of the public nature of it all, where these guys would go out and do things. And this is it's a little harder to write about in a way because it's a different generation, and it's a generation where much more of what you did was behind a cloak.
Okay.
And if you were going to be a bunch of Lakers, now every now and then they'd get caught at a strip club, blah, blah, blah. But like, you generally, if you were going to party, you were going to do it in a room or in a roped off VIP section or at someone's house. And it was a much more sort of it was a period of growing awareness of how valuable you could be as a product, and therefore you didn't want to soil your product by doing really stupid things. You know, like the '86 Mets would sit around after a game, tap a keg, then go out to a bar, Finn McCool's on Long Island, and get drunk. And it wasn't a thought like, oh, we can't do this because blank. But if you're not even just Shaquille O'Neal, if you're Glenn Rice or Samaki Walker or Derek Fisher, you're worth millions of dollars. And you can't really afford to go off-brand. You just can't. So it's a drastically different era of sports public relationships, drastically different.
Did that make reporting on the book any different?
Yeah, harder. A million times harder. I hate saying this because it makes it sound like a negative on the book. I actually think I'm proud of this book. I feel like this book came out. I'm proud of how it came out. It was the most misery I've ever gone through writing a book.
Really?
It was by far the hardest book. Yes, it was the hardest book I've ever had to write. The writing process itself beat me to a pulp. Maybe part of that is getting older. Maybe part of it is having higher expectations as you get older. Maybe part of it is just the distractions in the world of social media and, you know,
right.
Just your brain kind of being reprogrammed a little bit to always check this and check that. But it was a beast of a book to write. It really was, which makes it all the more of an accomplishment for me. Like, I actually feel, I'm not kidding. When I see the book in front of me, I feel I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I'm not saying this is rocket science, but like, I feel like I did something and I fought through something that was really hard.
Right. So specifically on the writing process, you've written 9 books and thousands of articles. What made this
millions of articles?
Sure, why not? Why? What made? I mean, you kind of mentioned the social media in the world and stuff, but like from a material standpoint or like an actual what made this harder to kind of? What made this such a beast? Do you think?
I mean, part of it is. I think part of it is, again, like the era did not lend itself to as much access.
Sure.
And these athletes were raised in an era. For example, I went to, when the NBA All-Star Game was out here in LA, I went to a playground building where Ron Harper and I think Horace Grant were attending. And they were like NBA ambassadors. And I went up to Ron Harper and I introduced myself and I said, I'm working on this book. And just being blunt, he couldn't have been a bigger dick.
Really?
Like, he just blew me off like I was a piece of freaking dirt. And I'm not saying you owe it to me to talk to me. You do not owe it to me to talk to me. I think you do owe it to people to treat them like human beings. And he couldn't have been a bigger jerk. And he was like, oh, yeah, man, definitely, blah, blah, blah. Reach out to me, so-and-so. Crickets, nothing. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen with other books. Certainly it's happened with other books. I felt like it was always a fight. And I got a ton of people to talk. I did as well as I've ever done as far as getting people to talk. I got Shaq extensively. I got Phil Jackson for hours and hours. I got a lot of the major players. But it was lifting weights every day. It was really, really hard. I drove out to Arizona to knock on J.R. Ryder's door. It was all the Lakers. Another thing is the Lakers organization, which for the Showtime book was the best. And they had a PR guy, John Black, who could not have been better, more accessible, more open. Who do you need? How can I help you? Even if it didn't work out, he was always willing and available. Well, he was let go a couple years ago. And now it's like the perfect example is Mark Madsen's an assistant coach of the Lakers. And they said, I was trying to get Madsen forever. The PR person was very bad at calling back. She never returned. I mean, it was just a freaking burden. She finally said, all right, come up and get Mark Madsen. You can talk to Mark Madsen after practice. I'm talking to Madsen. He's great. He could not be a nicer human being. He was completely engaged. I was probably talking to him for 15 minutes, and I looked behind his shoulder, and the PR person is giving me the end it sign, like her finger across the throat, like end it, time to end this. I'm like, nobody was in the building. It was me and Mark Madsen. They had nowhere to go. He was just being jolly and talking and clearly talking about this time period. It's it feels like from people I talk to who cover the NBA also, it has changed. Like everything has changed. It is much more difficult to get people to have access, to get people to open up, to get people to give you a few minutes. It's just so I work hard. I'm a dogged worker. I go after these interviews, but you know, it was rough. It was hard.
Yeah. So, I think I saw this on Twitter. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But you were done writing when Kobe died. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, I was done, and the book was pretty much edited.
Okay. Yeah, so do you remember where you were when you heard the news?
Yeah, I was in a corner bakery in Irvine, California, and my friend Amy Bass, who's an excellent writer, texted me and said something like, "News reports Kobe Bryant is dead," and it was crazy. You know, it was that same. I've been saying this, and it's true though. It kind of reminded me of being a kid and the Challenger exploded.
Right.
And you come home from school and someone says the Challenger exploded, and your head can't really digest that information. I felt like my head couldn't. It took a long time for me to sort of come to the reality that he actually had died. It was super bizarre. Yeah.
So, and this is unrelated to your book, but the Challenger is such a good analogy to it, because I remember my wife, daughter, and I were on the train leaving New York City, going up to Poughkeepsie to pick up our car. So we're on Metro North, and we had just come out of the tunnel at 125th in Harlem. So it's the first stop in the open air, and so your phone starts working, and I start seeing some tweets about Kobe, and I'm like, something happened, and then I saw it was Woj's tweet that he had died, and like a few minutes later, you can start hearing people say this out loud as the conductor comes through and says it, and it just struck me as like one of the rare times we have now where like we're all reading and reacting to the same news at the same time. Like we're such a fragmented media world. It stuck out to me as such a kind of defining time that he was such a, so young and such a big name too, that like my wife, who knows nothing about basketball, knew what this meant right away.
Oh yeah. My wife, her grandma is 101 this year. And she called me. She does not know. I'm not kidding about this. She did not know the Lakers were a basketball team. And she called me to ask about Kobe Bryant. I've written a book about the Lakers while I was married to her granddaughter. She did not know the Lakers were a basketball team, but she called me to ask about Kobe Bryant.
So how would this book, do you think, be different if Kobe had died earlier? If you were still reporting and writing this and you weren't done, how would this book be different?
Man, drastically. Because I think people are if I were going around asking people about their memories of Kobe Bryant, what do you remember about this? And blah, blah, blah. And he had just died. It had been a month after his death or a few weeks after his death. I mean, I probably get 50% of the stories and analogies I got. It's just different when you're talking about someone after he died. And I think the idea of, you saw the outpouring for Kobe when he died. And I'm not saying it wasn't sincere. I'm not saying that. But when someone dies, obviously you accentuate the positive, which I think is how it should be. I don't have a problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
But, a lot of these people did not like Kobe Bryant that much, and certainly not when they were playing with him. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, it would have drastically affected the book. It would have made it, I mean, it's weird, right? It would have made it harder to report, but it's a weird book to promote now, because my great fear is that people think I'm some guy cashing in on someone's death. And this idea that, because most people, you always think like, oh, everyone reads you on Twitter, everyone follows you, and everyone knows, but most people don't.
Right.
And I could see a lot of people being like, look, another asshole who's just capitalizing on someone's death and came out with a quick book.
Right. Or if you have the, not flattering stories about Kobe, of which I'm sure there are many, it looks like, oh, not only is he trying to get a quick book, but he's stomping on the grave of somebody who's now in the past 6 months or so become very beloved and kind of iconic in memory, and iconic since he passed away. So
yeah, that is correct. It's awkward. It's definitely awkward. And I don't really know what to do about it. I don't really know what to do about it.
Do you have a favorite reporting anecdote from the story? Like not like the actual story that you got, but like how you got it. You said you went down and knocked on J.R. Smith's door, or
J.R.
Not
Ryder.
J.R. Ryder, not J.R. Smith. J.R. Ryder's story. Do you have something? What's your favorite story from reporting this book?
Well, I may have a couple. J.R. Ryder was awesome. But I've told that story a lot, so I'll give you a different.
Okay.
I obviously wanted Phil Jackson, and I wasn't sure how to get him. I wasn't having that much luck. And Jeannie Buss, who's my favorite sports owner anywhere, I just emailed her. Obviously, she used to date Phil Jackson. So I just emailed her and I said, do you have any idea, if you were me, how you try to reach Phil Jackson? She said, well, let me send him an email. She wrote an email, and then she wrote me back, and she said, all right, you can email Phil and try to set something up. He said, or talk to you. And I was like, great, that's amazing. And I emailed him, and he said, well, when do you want to talk? And I said, I think he implied or said by phone. And I said, well, is there any way I can come out to see you? He said, sure. So I flew out to Montana where he lives, and meeting him at a coffee shop. And I'm sitting outside the coffee shop at a table. You always get there early, obviously, when you're meeting someone. And there's a little tip. Never have the person waiting for you. That's ridiculous. Like, you need to be there before the person. So I see him lumbering down the street. It's obviously him. I introduce myself. We sit inside. The first thing I say to him, I just want to say, I really appreciate you doing this. And he goes, I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for Jeannie. And I thought, well, this isn't going to last very long. Okay. We ended up spending about 8 hours together.
Oh, wow.
First, he's like, we have our coffee together. Then he said, I was thinking I'll give you a tour around the lake. Lives by a huge lake. I'll give you a tour around the lake. So we drive for probably 3 hours, maybe 2 to 3 hours around this lake. We stop for lunch, middle of the drive. We sit, we have lunch at an outdoor cafe. We're done with the lake. He's like, you want to come back to my place? We can keep talking. I was like, great. Go back to his place. We're sitting out on his porch. There's this cat crawling over us. I think he said he has a lot of strays. I don't think it was his cat in the back. At one point, the cat, we were on rocking chairs. And at one point, he was on his rocking chair, and he didn't notice the cat's tail was under his rocking chair.
Oh, no.
And he actually accidentally rocked on the cat's tail. Not on purpose, obviously. And then he's like, yeah, I think I don't know if he's going to take a nap or whatever, but he's like, you want to grab dinner later? I was like, great. So he took a nap. I went back to wherever, and then we met like 3 hours later, had dinner. He was awesome. I mean, he was awesome. And it wasn't just that he was awesome because he was great about the Lakers and he was excellent. It was more like, like I said, this book was a hard lift and it was difficult and it almost drove me to drink. But you have those moments as a journalist when you can't believe how fortunate you are to have this as a gig. And I would say, like, I kept saying this to my wife, like, somewhere out there in a parallel universe, there's a bunch of douchebag hedge fund guys who are bidding $500,000 for the spend a day with Phil Jackson in Montana raffle prize that I actually got for a plane ticket. Like, it was just the best. So that was for me, a very memorable experience for me.
Yeah. So, and not to turn this totally into like a teachable moment or anything, but I am curious. So he's a little, I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for Jeannie. When he starts out, you're thinking it's not going to go well. So what do you do to kind of turn that into the 8 hour day? Or is it anything you did, or is there anything that you can kind of take from this as like when you don't think it's going to go good, how you turn it into something good?
I mean, I think the number one thing is everything has to be a conversation. Nothing can be an interview. It's not really an interview. I mean, it is an interview, but it's not an interview. It's an early, you okay if I tape? Sure. And then that's it. Right.
Right.
That's really important. That's really, really important. And the other thing, again, like, it's so weird. You play to your contemporaries. Like, I feel like I could get a good interview with a 22-year-old Las Vegas Raider. But being honest, I think someone who's 22 probably has a better shot than I do. And it would
Sure.
take a lot of work for me at this point. Because it comes off, even though I actually listen, just an example, I listen to modern hip hop, like I can tell you a lot about modern hip hop. If I started dropping modern hip hop references to a 22-year-old, the guy's looking at me skeptically.
Right.
And he's like, okay, grandpa,
right.
I'm sure. Yeah. But it comes to an advantage. It's an advantage when you're dealing with guys who either you watch play growing up, so they're a little older than you, or you're their age. And I feel like if I had done this, if this had been 15 years earlier, I don't have this level of interview. Probably because Phil Jackson views me as kind of too young to maybe fully understand or appreciate. And maybe I would have been too young to fully understand or appreciate. Or like Shaq, I'm sitting across from Shaq. Shaq's a year younger than me. Shaq's a year older than me. We're contemporaries. We're literally contemporaries. It does something. It actually works in your favor. So that's a big one. Like that's a big, I can't stress that enough how if you can, it helps to sort of interview people who you understand and can relate to, and you're kind of sharing in the time frame of life's journey.
Yeah. So fourth time's the charm on this. I ask everybody it. So what's the best thing that you've read lately?
Imagine have you ever had an asshole who's like, my book?
No.
Have you ever had that?
No, I have not had that.
That would take a certain level of asshole, you say. And that is not. All right. There's a book I read, and it's called The Mighty Oak.
Okay.
And it was sent to me randomly. It's by a writer named Jeff Benz. It's fiction. I don't even read a ton of fiction, but it's a new book that just came out. It was sent to me by the publisher. I know Jeff only because I used to be an adjunct at Manhattanville College, and he was the head of the writing program there. And he just asked me if he could send me a book. I hadn't talked to him in years. I said, sure. I was bored one night. I started reading it. It's a fictional account of a beaten up hockey goon trying to hang on. It's one of the best books I've ever read in my life. It was so ridiculously good. No one knows about it. It kind of kills me. I wish the guy were more active on social media and promoting, because it's one of those books that deserves to be read.
Okay.
And nobody knows about it, but it's so good.
Awesome. So I will put a link to that to get at an indie bookstore in show notes. I can recommend, it's fiction, but it was really, I hate to say it, but it was really good because fiction is good. A Gentleman in Moscow. It's by a guy by the name of Amor Towles. I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly. Picked it up randomly, and it's about it's a weird sounding setup. It's a Russian count, a Russian aristocrat who is sentenced to life home imprisonment in this fancy Russian hotel by the Bolsheviks. So right after the revolution, and it kind of traces his life and like the adventures he has through there. I did not expect to love it. One of those books you didn't expect to love as much as I did, but the writing was just so beautifully detailed and so like funny and compelling that it was just one of those books that, you know, like sounds like The Mighty Oak. Like you didn't expect to love it, but then you couldn't put it down. It just sucked you into a world. I love when that happens too.
All right, so I just ordered that book on your recommendation on Amazon while we're talking, but I just want to say the difference between The Mighty Oak and this book is this book sold 2 million copies.
That's true.
And The Mighty Oak has probably sold 200 copies.
That's true. This is a New York Times this says New York Times bestseller on the copy I have. So this is not some obscure book. So, so anyway, awesome. So Jeff, your book is out now. People can get it wherever they buy their books, and look forward to talking to you again when the next one comes out. But thanks for your time this week.
I'm excited to make my 138th appearance on your podcast. Thanks for taking an interest. I really mean it, and I really appreciate it. I really do. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Other 51. Show notes for this and all of our episodes can be found at sportsmediaguide.com by clicking on the Other 51 tab. If you like the show, please consider giving it a rating and a review, either at Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. It really does help people find the show. Our theme music is by Ellie Moritz.